Hi, I'm Paul, this is Polymate 3D, and today we're going to be comparing 3D printed speaker drivers versus industry. Let's check it out. So today we'll be looking at a total of 7 loudspeaker drivers. All drivers are full range designs, with 5 being industry based and 2 being my own 3D printed variants. The cone test platform will be used to compare each one, and at the end of the video there will be clips of each one playing. Of the 5 industry models, there is also some variants. We have 2 which are traditional off-the-shelf, well-respected drivers from Dayton Audio, which is routinely getting good reviews. Another 2 are brands known from complete products. These are big names Samsung and Bose. The final industry driver is from Tectonic Elements and is a BMR, or balanced mode radiator design. This is a very different approach to a speaker cone, and is something we'll also be exploring at some stage. Finally, we have my 2 3D printed drivers. These are FD51-4OS, an open source free to download driver along with cabinet designs. The second is FD51-4PE, a more advanced evolution and complete redesign for my Patreon supporters, which includes extra cabinet designs. It will be interesting to see how they perform against one another. How will 3D printing fare after 3 years of effort? First up is a Dayton Audio PS95-8. This is a well-respected driver in the DIY audio community and is routinely suggested as a good candidate for first-time builders. This is exactly why it is in my testing. In my experience with it, I find it a bit bright, and although fine for short listening sessions, becomes fatiguing over a long stint. Frequency response first, and it covers the entire frequency response with ease. Damping is not the best, but also not the worst at give or take 10 decibels. It is showing that high-end bump from 11 to 16 kHz, which is that brightness I speak of. With distortion peaking at 1.7%, distortion at 4.2 kHz, this is perfectly fine. Overall, this gives the driver a score of 23. Performance overall was good, and if you like a bright top end to your music, it's a good solid choice. Next is the Dayton Audio ND90. This driver is another well-known driver and is used often thanks to its large excursion limits of 4mm. It is quite often crossed over with a tweeter due to people wanting more high-end frequency response, especially off-axis due to the deep cone profile and the role of the surround obstructing at angles. Frequency response we see straight away does not extend out like the PS95 did, getting comfortably to around 16 kHz. It also has no bump in the high-end frequencies. Damping is really not this driver's friend, and is give or take 16 decibels, not ideal for a full range driver. This is mainly due to the dip at 13 kHz. Distortion stays solid, peaking at 0.7% at 2.2 kHz. Overall, this gives the ND90 a score of 18. If we could lose the dip, have a slightly more shallow concave profile, and invert the surround without issues, it would be a much stronger contender. Next is the Tectonic Elements 65C 20F-8 BMR. This type of speaker drops cones altogether in turn of creating multiple breakup points across the surface. It is a highly interesting field with a lot of potential. This here is a budget offering and is often brought up with the PS95 as a good first speaker to build around. Let's see. Frequency response is good all the way out to 20 kHz. Damping is okay with a give or take 12.5 decibel variance. The key thing here is the changes in volume versus frequency is more sudden. It also shows a bump in the high frequency response like the PS95 driver, but again it's more sharp and sudden. Distortion again is good with a peak of 1.32% at 4 kHz. Overall, the Tectonic BMR gets a score of 21.5, somewhere between the 2 from Dayton Audio, but with sudden abrupt changes in frequency response. Not bad at all, and I expect to see more from BMR technology. Up next is one of the big brands, Bose. This driver came from a Bose SoundTouch 20 with an asking price of approximately £280. How will it compare? Frequency response is decent, pushing out to 15 kHz, but definitely more cut off compared to some offerings we have seen. Its damping is also decent at give or take 10 decibels, putting it in a good place compared to what has come before. Distortion is also very clean, peaking at 0.9% at 4.4 kHz. This makes it a good all-rounder, with the likes of PS95 having a slight upper hand. It scores a total of 22 out of 30. Is it worth £280? That's entirely up to you. For now, it is a good price benchmark to compare performance. Next is the other big brand, Samsung. This was taken from an HT-C6900W home theatre system. Not as well known for quality audio products, how will it fare against the Bose driver? Frequency response is a similar situation, extending slightly further out to 17 kHz. The main thing to note here with damping is there's a horrible dip at 4.2 kHz of over 15 decibels. The heavy mass nature of this driver allows the frequency elsewhere to be pretty stable, but that dip results in a give or take 12 decibel variance. Distortion is okay, but again rises to a peak of 1.8%, putting it on the higher end of what we've seen. This results in the Samsung driver scoring 20. This is a perfect example of a product being made to reach a cost and time schedule, and these issues just couldn't be fixed. Now comes the interesting comparison. How do my 3D printed drivers fare against these industry drivers? I have been learning, prototyping, testing and revising my designs now for 3 years in the pursuit to achieve industry matching performance. Let's see how I'm doing. Starting with FD51-4OS. Frequency response is good at 15.5 kHz and damping comes in at give or take 9 decibels. This is the best we have actually seen from these drivers. Distortion comes in at 0.9% at 1.5 kHz, showing that distortion from a 3D printed driver at the same volume levels can be comparable. The score then for FD51-4OS is 22.5 out of 30. This is an open source driver, remember, that you can start working on making yourself if you own a 3D printer. Let's now see how FD51-4PE fares. Frequency response is a bit further to 18 kHz and has a slow downwards trend compared to FD51-4OS, so it should be more laid back. Damping is a little worse at give or take 11.5 decibels. Distortion stays low across the board with a maximum peak of 0.6%. I believe this is the best distortion result of the lot, along with the most consistency across the frequency response. Overall, this gives FD51-4PE a score of 22, 0.5 off the open source design. So what's going on here, and are these 3D printed drivers truly competing? Firstly, FD51-4PE does indeed perform a little worse compared to FD51-4OS from testing 200Hz upwards. What FD51-4PE can do is take more power and reproduce more low-end frequency response compared to FD51-4OS. So are 3D printed drivers competing? In the areas we're testing in, it's a big yes, but there are caveats. The first big one is sound pressure level. These printed drivers have weak motors, meaning they're more quiet than the industry drivers. This does not, however, mean they do not have a usable amount of volume, being able to play back happily at 78 to 83 decibels at 1 meter as a Bluetooth speaker pair. The second area is bass response, which my drivers continue to have a high resonant frequency due to the suspension not being soft enough. This again, however, is being resolved with the launch of WF81, a larger driver designed to work in 3D printed cabinets and extend the low-end performance along with increasing the SPL. On top of this, more expensive to make 3D printed drivers are planned, which will bridge the gap with these last two areas, leaving the industry drivers nowhere else to outperform. Speaking of cost, the cheapest drivers tested here will set you back £15 to £35 each, whereas the parts to make a pair of FD51-4OS drivers can be had for less than £15. Joining Patreon and getting access to FD51-4PE further improves on SPL and low-end performance, giving you a better driver for a little more. To finish off, why don't you be the judge of how they sound? If you have a pair of decent headphones, put them on and take a listen to a short clip of each driver in action. All clips were captured under the same conditions and sound pressure volumes to attain as accurate reproduction as I can. I hope you found the video today useful and shows the potential 3D printed drivers have. In the next video we'll be dissecting the PS95 driver and running it on the test platform to see what is affecting its sound production. Please feel free to like and subscribe. Any feedback, drop me a message or chat to me on Twitter. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.